We're all familiar with Hell's Gate in the Fraser Canyon, and Vancouver's majestic Lions Gate is world famous. Well, now the University of BC is going to have its very own Transylvania Gate. It's a token of gratitude from 141 Hungarian forestry students who fled the 1956 Russian invasion and found a new life in Canada. The massive hand-carved portal made of prime yellow cypress is welcoming visitors to this weekend's Hungarian festival at the Plaza of Nations.
Hungarians proudly boast a passion for the seven lively arts. No matter what their trade or profession, deep in every Magyar soul is a painter, a sculptor, musician, or a dancer. A case in point, forestry scientist Les Jotza. He doubles in brass as a virtuoso creator of Hungarian art. It was his artist's eye and carving skills that created the Transylvania Gate, which welcomes visitors to the festival.
The large lettering Isten hozott is the Hungarian equivalent of welcome. Then we have Bienvenue is the French equivalent with the fleur-de-lis. And last but not least, we have the Thunderbird. HLI is the native greeting when you come to someone's home.
For centuries, artisans in the Carpathian Mountains have created these monuments of wood for the mansions and villages of Transylvania. Now this one, carved in yellow cypress from trees 1,000 years old, has been made for the forestry department at UBC.
And it shows we were at UBC from 1957 to 1961, and we erected it in 1992.
The first crack in the Iron Curtain came in 1956 when Hungary rebelled against communist rule. Les Jotza was part of a student roadblock set up to stop an invading Russian tank column, but their guns wouldn't fire. Someone had removed the firing pins. The students fled to Canada, and years later, 141 of them graduated from UBC's forestry department.
I graduated in 1960, and here we have the dichotomy of the Canadian totem pole, the Hungarian background, you know, in a pictorial sense.
Did you get a lot of good pictures of the gate?
Yes.
Does it mean anything to you? Does it have any special significance to you?
Yes, definitely.
How come?
I am a Sopron graduate.
Oh, you are?
Yes, and he was who carved it. He was my classmate.
Is that right? So you're one of the
yes, I am.
fellows who broke out after the revolution.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this gate is a symbol of the gratitude of those Hungarian students to Canada, which gave them a new start after their world had been destroyed.
It was very enjoyable. In fact, we both felt privileged to be able to do this.
But what do you do if your chisel slips? I mean, if you make an ink blot, you can always eradicate it, but what do you do if your chisel slips?
Take a new post. No, it doesn't slip. You know, you have full control.
The Hungarian Festival is just one of the many things going on in the province this weekend, and here are some of the others.
6 years ago, there was the crackle of gunfire and the rumble of tanks in one of Europe's oldest cities. It was October of 1956, and Soviet troops were rolling into Budapest to crush the Hungarian Revolution.
Well, in the midst of the fighting, the entire forestry department at Sopron University, students and teachers alike, decided to flee the Soviet oppression. Tonight, in our regular timepiece feature, Terry Dolan looks back at the time when British Columbians opened their hearts to the Hungarian refugees.
Hungary was the first of the so-called Eastern Bloc countries to rise up against the Soviet domination in the years following the Second World War. And it paid the price as the iron fist of the Soviet military and the Hungarian secret police came down hard. It started out with street demonstrations, stopping traffic, testing the police, burning protest banners. But soon it became savage. Armed combat between Soviet troops and Hungarians who came to be known as freedom fighters. But the Soviet forces had the edge. They had tanks, lots of them, and plenty of troops and lots of ammunition, backed, if it came to that, by the awesome might of the whole Red Army. It was a dark time for Hungarians, a brutal time. 250,000 Hungarians fled their homeland, and Canada took about 37,000 of them, and many came to Vancouver. The scene was Vancouver International Airport as the first of the so-called Freedom Flights, a Canadian Pacific Airlines charter, touched down. On hand to welcome those first refugees was the late Mayor Fred Hume of Vancouver, an old political pro who knew the power of a good picture. So Fred went aboard the plane and carried a Hungarian child down the steps. And the late Jimmy Sinclair, a Liberal cabinet minister at the time, spoke for the federal government.
Canada is a rich and a happy country, but our greatest possession is our freedom. This is a country where everyone is free to do what they want, to worship in the way they want. Free to leave the country if you do not like the country. But we hope you're going to like the country.
Until they got on their feet in their new country, many of the refugees were housed in what came to be known as the Hungarian Village near the Abbotsford Airport. A collection of old military huts, brought up to livable standards with a little elbow grease. The story of the refugees was dramatic enough, but inside it was an even more interesting highlight. It happened when the University of BC agreed to adopt 250 students and faculty members from Hungary's Sopron Forestry Engineering University. Sopron is a community west of Budapest, near the Austrian border. Together and individually, the students and staff headed west, determined to find a new life, far removed from the conflict.
So these are some examples for you in terms of value added and what we can do.
Meet Les Josa. He was an 18-year-old Sopron student at the time of the revolt, and Josa graduated in 1961 from UBC and now works at the university as a wood resources scientist for a private company. When Canada offered sanctuary, the Sopron University expatriates grabbed at the chance.
The dean of the group, he played, of course, the leading role, what to do with the group. Dean Roller wanted to have the group together, and he wanted to not only have the group together, but to finish their studies. In other words, graduate these people. And to make a long story short, the Canadian offer at that time was the most attractive to us, and that's how we ended up in Canada.
They flew to Montreal and took the train to MATSQUI in the Fraser Valley in the freezing January of 1957. The students joined other Hungarian refugees at Abbotsford and began the job of getting used to their new surroundings, the new customs, and the language.
In retrospect, we knew something about Canada, but we had absolutely no idea where we would end up. But I can tell you, on behalf of my colleagues, all 150 plus ex-Soproners, that this was an excellent decision to come to Canada. Best place in the world.
About a month later, the students left Abbotsford and journeyed by bus to Powell River, where the former Powell River Company gave them housing and summer jobs before they enrolled at UBC that fall. And the helping hands given the Hungarians at that time became an example to follow and helps present-day refugees.
The people of Canada were very good to us, taking us in. And for that reason, in our private lives, we are putting that back in through working with the Vietnamese and other refugees, because we know what it means to be given a chance for decent life.
In the fall of 1957, the young Hungarians enrolled at UBC. The campus was a new world. The UBC Forestry faculty sponsored them for 5 years. Of the 250 forestry students who came to Canada, 141 of them eventually graduated from UBC. Josa once returned to Hungary for a visit and discovered that you really can't go home again.
I was very curious what kind of feelings I would have going back to Hungary. You have sort of fantasies in the back of your mind. Do you want to bend down and kiss the ground type of a thing? But I can tell you, Terry, I felt that way when I came back to Canada.
The story comes full circle with the crafting of a decorative Hungarian gate. It's of a type found throughout the Hungarian countryside and will be a gift from the Vancouver Hungarian community to UBC. The gate was assembled for a recent Hungarian-Canadian festival, then was taken apart for some finishing touches and weatherproofing. Soon it will be given a permanent base on the UBC main mall. There's a saying, what goes around comes around, and there is a certain symbolism here. a new gate for a university that once opened its gates to some refugee students from a war-torn land. Terry Dolan, CBC News.
Great story. We're back in a moment with